Hello and welcome to you all. Welcome to Webhelp's webinar. I'm Nora Boros. I'm the Webhelp Chief Sector Growth Officer and the host for today's webinar. We're truly delighted to have you all today, and thank you very much for taking the time out in your very busy agendas, especially as we approach the end of the year. In this 50-minute session, we aim to discuss today the impact COVID-19 has had on the travel industry and the response that organizations have taken to rise to these meaningful challenges, and especially highlighting the key lessons learned and how to incorporate some of these lessons into our future strategy for 2021 and beyond. Especially as vaccination programs have started in several countries, what the outlook for travel look like. Joining me today is leading industry experts who will give an overview of the airline, the leisure, the business travel experts, as well as sustainable travel. So please join me in welcoming our speakers today. Meltem Uysaler, she's Senior Director of Global Customer Operations and Central Direct Sales at IATA. John Leighton, Head of Customer Service at easyJet. Cowan, Director, Global Customer Operations at Egencia Expedia Group. And Eric de la Bonnardière, CEO of Evaneos. During the session, you can please ask questions in the comment section on the bottom left of this event, and we will answer all the Q&As at the end. So let us get started. In the first section of this webinar, we would like to explore the overall impact on the industry. Notably, travel and hospitality has been one of the hardest hit industries because of COVID-19. Governments have closed borders, crowded planes, and most all prevented face-to-face contacts with others. So Meltem, turning to you for our first questions. We have all seen what happened in the media, but what is the real truth on the impact on the airline and the broader travel industry of COVID-19?
Thank you very much, Nora. I want to start by stating that the travel and tourism industry is one of the world's largest sectors, driving socio-economic and development and job creation. So it plays an important role in driving prosperity and freedom around the world. So just to give you some numbers to put this into perspective, from 2014 to 2019, 1 in 4 new jobs were created by the industry. The industry contributed with close to $9 trillion US to the world's GDP, that is over 10% of the global GDP. So unfortunately today, we are facing an unprecedented crisis in the industry. So if we focus on the latest projections from IATA, issued early this month during our annual general meeting, first of all, most air travel markets remain weak. And in fact, we estimate that the air transport industry will lose $157 billion this year and the next due to the pandemic. And we expect that passenger traffic will come back to 2019 levels only by 2024 at the earliest. So the air travel recovery is very slow, and the October traffic figures show that, first of all, international traffic recovery is stalled at almost 90% below 2019, as most borders remain closed or have quarantines which have the same effect. Secondly, domestic traffic is slowly improving, but is still around 40% down from 2019. And we are seeing that the recovery is uneven, despite China's domestic market has nearly recovered, but other domestic markets are highly depressed, including the US, which is the biggest domestic market, down by 61%. So, but we cannot wait until vaccines are widely distributed to reopen the borders and lift quarantines. So that's why the industry is calling for governments to implement COVID-19 testing to open borders safely. So finally, carrying freight is the only bright spot, positively speaking, in the industry, with cargo revenues expected to increase by 15% from 2019. So about 50% of all air cargo is moved in the bellies of the passenger airplanes. So this is fundamental in the upcoming challenge we are facing as an industry in our role to distribute the vaccines.
Thank you, Meltem, for the overview. So Eric, now turning to you, have you observed any particular impacts when it comes to the leisure sector?
Yes, of course, we've seen some impacts, which were actually very strong in leisure. So just to put some context, Evaneos is a marketplace connecting travelers with local DMCs based in all the destinations in the world to create individual and customized trips. So on our side, it all started with the closure of China in January. And we weren't very worried at that time because China represents only 1% of our sales. But then there was Asia. We started to be worried. And from March, it was a total stop. And there was just a small rebound this summer in European destination. And since October, it has stopped again. So we are talking about bookings that have dropped by more than 90% on our side and departure by 95%. So it's huge. I think that since the beginning, the leisure segment has been more impacted than the travel business because business travelers have had derogations in many countries, and some trips are almost mandatory to continue to run certain businesses. But on the leisure side, nothing is compulsory. I mean, you can live without traveling, even if I personally don't. But travelers, they can wait. They don't want to take any risk on cancellation, for example. So we are such in an uncertain environment that travelers cannot plan ahead. And even when it's possible to travel, there are a lot of psychological breaks to do it. Or because also nobody is sure to have a PCR test within 72 hours. So today we see no significant rebound, and the only possible outcome is really the mass vaccination. There are, however, a few exceptions per destination. For example, at the moment we are growing quite fast in Tanzania because it's quite easy to get in Tanzania. Also in France, this Christmas, it's not possible to ski. So we see some people who have chosen to prepare a trip. And this mainly concerns high-end trips. So probably people who had planned to go to a ski resort and they will travel mid or long haul for Christmas. But we all hope that it's going to be possible. If we talk about the future, on the other hand, I think the leisure segment will recover probably faster than business travel because there is a basic trend to replace in business travel physical meetings with online meetings. But in the leisure segment, there is an eagerness to travel again, and there is a really large stock of travelers who want really to travel as soon as possible. And we won't replace real travel, I think, with virtual travel. It's a trend, but it's not massive. When we talk about a trip made of experience and discovery as we do at Evaneos. So I don't think anything can replace the real encounters, the smells, the local food, emotions we feel when we travel in real life. So in leisure, I would bet on the back to normal more in 2022 than in 24, as it has just been mentioned for airlines.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm sure many of us can relate to what you say. I personally can't wait to onboard a flight again and actually to travel. So thank you very much for that perspective. Paul, Egencia is a huge player in business travel. And unfortunately, we've seen that business travel has nearly dropped to 0%, as home working became mandatory across all of the globe. So what have you observed? Have you seen any exceptions to this overall?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, Nora, to consider and learn from the year that we've just had. So as different regions in the world have experienced the different impacts of the virus at different times, we've seen fluctuations. So we see now travel in parts of APAC, particularly China, back to normal levels. And in fact, in some of those parts of the world, trade at higher than pre-COVID levels. We've seen, again, the same sorts of fluctuations in response to what's happening locally, geographically, and with governments. But there are some parts of the world, the Nordics, for example, where there are effectively some travel bubbles between the countries. We see countries with higher proportions of domestic travel having recovered very quickly. They respond to government legislation in a very elastic way. So we've seen some things like that. I think from our perspective that there's a couple of things as well that we've learned. So making sure that as those fluctuations happen regionally and by country level, we've got the right flexibility in our resourcing models to make sure that we are continuing to deal well with our customers. So in the same way that many of our travelers are forced to work from home, we enabled all of our travel consultants, all of our service people to also work from home at the start of the pandemic. I think also from a technology point of view, it's been really important to assist our clients and customers through this. So we developed a travel advisory center where customers can go and understand what the local conditions are that facilitate or not their travel. And of course, from a B2B perspective in corporate travel, we're looking after our clients and making sure that from an account management point of view, we're reaching out and making sure that we're helping settle nerves and address concerns, things like duty of care, making sure we're really clear on that during COVID. So I think a mix. I think a mix of what's happening in the macro world. We clearly can't buck that trend, but what we do and what we have done in response to that, I think creates our own demand channels.
Thanks, Paul. Very interesting to hear that, and hopefully with the vaccines program, we're all going to be able to again contribute to our businesses by traveling and meeting with our colleagues across the world as well. Thanks for that. I think just to add on what you all said, I think at Webhelp we've also observed that the first and the second waves of that crisis, showed us the importance of resilience, flexibility, and adaptability. Webhelp has been able to move more than 75% of our workforce, working at home, but it's definitely going to stay, I think, a pattern for the future. So these characteristics have all shifted our focus around how to adapt to our customers' needs rather quickly, especially as unfortunately the level of uncertainty, is continuing to develop, and we have to be prepared for what potentially the third wave, of COVID might look like in the beginning of the year. But more importantly, we have also observed that there's been an impact on the customer experience. So now shifting and transitioning to our second section of this webinar, we have definitely witnessed across the world an acceleration of digitization. And I think, the press forward button around digitization has been pushed forever, even for companies that were probably not that prepared for this change as yet. So operational transformation is key. Structural transformation is key to keep up with the rising demand from customers. So it's been a tough time, I think, for travel companies, as most of the travel companies had almost no income during this period of time. However, again, the expectations of the traveler just continuously increased. To get funds, they wanted to talk to the travel companies. So John at easyJet, turning to you, what customer behaviors have you observed during this period, and what has changed in customer experience, and how have you responded as an organization to these new challenges?
No, Nora, I massively agree, and I think something that we probably didn't focus on before, which we've had to do over the last 9 months, is operational transformation. We've had a heavy focus on digital. The last 9 months for us has been, I think, just a strange kind of set of problems that we've had to deal with. Whereas I think you've mentioned we've had just an unbelievable program of mass cancellation of flights, alongside an unheard of propensity to contact into all of our languages and all of our centres through all channels. So with the type of reason why people have been contacting us, we've never dealt with before. And I think for the first couple of months, it was tough, because as a lot of people on this call would know, that I think we not only have you got this huge propensity to contact, you've got a socially distanced workforce that you've never had to deal with before. And I think learning that operational transformation on the go has taught us all quite a few lessons, and thrown quite a few BCP plans out of the window that I think were probably prevalent before, right? So the key thing for me, and how we settled our situation, and how I believe that we are now kind of have a robust way of handling the current situation, is customer knowledge, right? So one thing that wasn't happening before, which is it reverses itself on what we were seeing, is customer advocacy on social. So social media seems to have driven, I think from my side, a lot of that customer knowledge, and it's how we can come in and make sure that that knowledge that was being shared across peer-to-peer across customers was actually factually correct, and actually made sure that the customers' kind of nervousness around travel or nervousness around what was going to happen with a ticket was being controlled, because I think the narrative was being taken away, not only from us, but a lot of travel companies on social media. So it was making sure that we understood how we could affect that from a live perspective. So we got very close to social media as the pinnacle of our channel choice, and then from there, we were able to affect the contact propensity into our contact centers, into live chat, and into email. I think where we stand today, I feel that getting on top of things and making sure that we have quick response times and our front line is set up to answer those questions has really helped. And I think there where customer behavior is then developed is customers now have that trust in what we are saying, and I think that will lead us very, very healthily into the recovery section of what's going on at the moment.
Thank Paul. This is very insightful. I think we've seen that these organizations that were able to adapt rapidly and kept their phone lines or contact channels open probably have increased opportunities for driving loyalty for their travelers, unlike some others that have decided to close any channels of communication and left, some of the travelers stranded. So thanks, John, for that insight. Eric, turning to you on that same questions, what have you learned from that period? I'm sure that, again, customer behaviors and expectations have maybe changed the way we procure, we buy, we dream about travel. So what have you learned at Evaneos from this period?
Yeah, first thing is that we have been managing a lot of mass cancellations, of course, and there was a lot of operation to handle during the crisis. But this is not the only thing we did, and we really try to spend a lot of time to prepare the future, to lay the foundations of new customer experiences, to work on our technology, and on communicating a lot with the travelers. So we are really on that side to really keep contact with the travelers, and to maybe a lot of them had problems and they were really worried to cancel their holidays, but it's for us an occasion to answer very professionally and to propose a solution. And I think we created here some advocacy in the community. So I think the first thing that will be important in the near future is that people will want much more flexibility, more flexible cancellation conditions, and also insurance products that really guarantee last-minute refunds if there is a COVID problem. In France, we had the chance to benefit for 6 months from a new law, which allows us to impose a postponement instead of cancellation and a refund. And this has saved many companies in France, at least, I think, but it's now over. So travelers will now study travel contracts much more. So we have to pull contract. So we want to make the contract now beautiful to read and help people accessing to the right information very quickly. So also we worked on our side on the guarantee for free cancellation 2 weeks before departure. It was more than 1 month before, so we have to be more flexible. Second thing is that I think travelers will also want to avoid traveling in large groups in favor individual travel to avoid proximity. So it will serve our business, of course, because we do only individual travel, but I mean, we see that tour operators organizing big group tours are struggling a little bit, and I think they will struggle attracting customers. They will also probably, the travelers, want to avoid places of mass tourism, which can be, for example, visited virtually, and which force them to come across a lot of people. So it's a trend, and all those trends, we have identified them by conducting a study among our traveler base, which shows also that the train or car will be favored for nearby destination not only in the country of the customers, but also in the nearby countries, and that the plane will be taken rather for medium or long distance travel. So it was here before, but it's just accelerating trend. Our study shows also that the travelers will travel by long distance less often, but for a longer period of time, to make each trip an exceptional moment, so that they can really actually get to know the destination country. So I think we are moving slowly from a commodity market where it's very easy to travel, to very easy to get into a plane, to a much more qualitative market where people really think about their journey. And it will favor, I think, journeys of experience, journeys where you experience things that you can't do from your sofa or close to home. So I think people will really seek for discovery and really go of their comfort zone. So we are also seeing an increase in the value of nearby destinations, of course. For example, this summer, we have seen French people traveling in France for 2 weeks as if they were discovering another country. So they plan everything in advance, as if they were going to Tanzania or Brazil. And in a way, they kind of rediscover their own country. And I think there is a new opportunity there, and we are working on that. All of this, I think, is an opportunity for us because all of these trends were present before the crisis. It's really accelerating this. And at Evaneos, we are really specialized in this kind of discovery and experience multi-day tours to help people go off the beaten track. So we match, I think, the desires of post-COVID travelers. And they will also take into account the environmental and social impact of their trips. But I think we will talk about that a bit later.
Thank you, Eric. Absolutely. I think, again, there are expectations as travelers has changed, and hopefully for a better world, but we'll address that in the last section. So before we move there, just wanted to give you again some perspectives of what we've observed, at Webhelp through this period of time. So first of all, we have worked very, very closely with our customers to, again, be able to flex their operations. It was a very sudden situation. Lockdowns came in very quickly. So from one day to the other, we needed to show flexibility, adaptability. And I think the way we actually manage our partnerships, building client intimacy, have helped us to really flex our operations in an extraordinary way. What we've done, so we've been actually being able to scale down our outsourced operation across our contact centers across the globe. By also protecting employment. We're a truly people-first organization, and putting our people at the heart of what we do was essentially important to us. So it was very important that we also maintained knowledge and keep the knowledge. As you know, travel is a complex industry, so it takes us a long time to train our people. So not only we attract the best people and the best talent in the market, we also train them, and it's a lot of investment from our customers, but also from Webhelp. So we've been able to protect their employment and keep the knowledge of tenured staff in our operations. But at the same time, we have also, again, accelerated that digital transition, and we've been implementing machine translation across a lot of the campaigns to actually deal with a lot of demand across multiple language in a quicker handling time, as well as implemented chatbots for more simple transactions. So I would say definitely the digital acceleration has happened, and some of these technologies will potentially stay forever as part of the delivery solution for our customers. So this now leads me to our third and final section before the Q&A. So with all the learnings, we're now preparing for this better world, for that future, for that life post-COVID. And the industry rebound hopefully is just around the corner, with vaccination campaigns that have started in Europe and in the US this past days. A recent McKinsey study that I think most of you would have seen projected that travel will only come back in 2024 to the level of 2019, so what it was before COVID. Is this still accurate, or do we believe that the introduction of the vaccine somehow improved our horizons? And do we think that, the rebound will be quicker? Are there any diversity across the globe in regions, in populations, in different demographics? Are there any changes to that 2024 picture that, you know, some of the industry specialists are projecting. So turning to you, Paul, first, you know, how is Expedia Group and Egencia in particular preparing for the travel recovery?
Yeah, I think I'll probably echo a few things that have already been said. So I think key thing amongst still uncertainty, certainly hope in terms of the vaccine, and we're optimistic in Egencia and about it not taking until 2024 to pull all that back. But flexibility remains, I think, really key. I think if there's anything that 2020 has taught us, it's about the importance of having different sorts of flexibility. So, you know, we see travel policies change. We see what suppliers in terms of airlines and hotels now offer our end customers, and the ability to have our travel consultants be really familiar with that and adapt and do new things for our clients is really important. The ability of us to be able to have a resourcing model that will operate flexibly as the vaccine hopefully takes hold globally, but you know, some countries will travel more quickly than others for some of the reasons I gave before, the proportion of domestic traffic, the proximity of other countries where business travel takes place. So flexibility and resourcing is really important. We've also been building lots of new technology, so accelerating some of our digital capabilities. And you know, our clients are now able to do much more online than ever before. So that gives flexibility. You mentioned, Nora, about making sure that all channels are available. We've maintained that and started to add chat as a channel. So again, giving customers more choice, more flexibility in an uncertain world. And across the wider Expedia Group, you know, we're leveraging the power of the enterprise to make sure we're staying abreast and up to date with global developments. So having, you know, some sort of vaccination validation, some sort of vaccination passport in an app is something that we are keenly watching developments on, so that we can facilitate very easily global travel when it returns.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. So now turning to you, Meltem, from an IATA perspective, you know, what do the travel companies will have to do on a very practical level to ensure that they are successful in the medium term, you know, based on all the learnings from COVID? What practically travel companies will have to do to maybe survive and actually better perform as the industry rebounds?
Thank you, Nora. I think this is a very interesting topic, as I believe we need to take actions at the minimum by taking advantage of two factors. They should make us feel privileged compared to the generations who could have experienced this kind of a pandemic in the earlier centuries. One, what we have learned from the past experiences, to what the advanced technologies of the 21st century has to offer. To start with, the industry is very resilient. It has weathered many catastrophic events like the Gulf War, 9/11, SARS, 2008 financial crisis, and it has always managed to come back. So if you look back at the 2008 financial crisis, the companies that came out in good health were the ones that created flexibility in their balance sheets before the crisis. So it allowed them to reshape their portfolio during the crisis, and they thought really hard about which cost mattered and focused their investments in areas with high return on investment. So on the other hand, it is also about balancing innovation versus efficiency. So efficiency to save today and be lean, and innovation to continue to build the future. So when it comes to some practical actions, I would like to talk about three main areas here. First of all, as we have seen during the different interventions, controlling COVID-19 is challenging, and travelers around the world are shifting, changing, or canceling their trips. This is creating an unprecedented spike in volume in the contact centers. I think most of us know that. So to give you an example, during the third week of March 2020, the average waiting time for customers wanting to change their travel was 2 hours. So as you all know, volumes in a contact center translates into costs. So how can companies manage that? So if you really take a look at that, the answer is most of the time by reducing their volumes, by looking at First of all, streamlining the customer experience, eliminating waste and digitizing key elements of a process, and optimizing customer demand, balancing volumes across the channels. Secondly, when looking at innovation, I believe that touchless technologies are key in that sense. 31% of travelers request that, for example, face-to-face or any type of contact with others is minimized across the end-to-end value chain. And secondly, for example, 37% of the travelers stated they would like to see contactless payments accepted globally to remove the need to carry or exchange cash. So airlines and airports have quickly adopted touchless technology, and let me give you some examples from our industry. To start with, Cathay Pacific. Cathay Pacific offers contactless check-in, biometric gates at boarding, and modified meal service to reduce contact with the crew. The second example is United Airlines. United Airlines was the first to introduce what they claim is the first touchless check-in experience at the London Heathrow Airport. So we clearly see that these solutions that enhance transparency, clear communication, and seamless payments and boarding are going to be the clear winners of 2021. So last but not least, health, hygiene, and safety are the new currencies to earn customers' loyalty. So, for example, 40% of the travelers are stating that they would favor airlines, airports, and hotels with higher health and safety standards. So although the customer comes first, earning miles and extra nights might not carry the same value they once did. So travelers will expect companies to go the extra mile to ensure the health and safety or risk losing their loyalty and trust. So let me give you an example of what we are doing at IATA. So we have recently announced we are developing the IATA Travel Pass. It's a mobile app that helps travelers to restore and manage their verified certifications for COVID-19 tests or vaccines. So this will be important for governments that are likely to require either verified testing or vaccination proof as a condition of international travel during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. It is more secure and efficient than current paper processes, given the potentially enormous scale of testing or vaccine verifications that will need to be securely managed. So by the way, it is very important for me to state here that IATA Travel Pass will be compliant with applicable privacy laws and regulations, and the travelers will always remain in control of their data with their privacy protected. So the IATA Travel Pass does not store any data centrally. So now before I finish, let me mention that in a crisis, agility and speed is fundamental. But more importantly, leaders need to be very assertive and make sound decisions. So I would like to take this opportunity to encourage all of you who are part of the travel and tourism industry to join IATA in our efforts to reopen borders without quarantine. It's a very important mission here. And it is very important for me to mention that the risk of in-flight transmission is very low. And there have been millions of flights since the start of the COVID-19 outbreak, resulting in less than only 50 confirmed cases of transmission in flight. So finally, what I would like to say is that keeping the safety measures at all times during the travel experience is fundamental to ensure a healthy experience and rebuild confidence in the industry. I think these are some of the practical solutions around this will be key in the coming years. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Meltem. I think you're again just illustrating how important it is to have the traveler at the heart and focusing on their safety with speed, agility, and ease. We talk a lot about customer effort score. I think this is going to be a KPI that we will all be very focusedly measuring in the next couple of months as well. So now turning to you, John, easyJet being a truly digital native organization from the outset, how will your channel strategy evolve to face the demand, which we will likely see as soon as we're more encouraged to book travel, hopefully, for the next summer?
And Nora, I think the point you just made there about ease, we are focusing more and more on customer ease now, and that's where a lot of this the change in our digital strategy is going to occur over the next kind of 12 to 18 months. I think there's been a few kind of discussions kind of this afternoon around that rapid response and making sure the knowledge is right and all of this. And I think where we're amending amending, I would say that we're starting to develop our digital strategy is making sure that automation is used in the right place. So automation is key for me to make sure that where customers need that information, where things are changing so rapidly that flights could be on one day, they could be off the next day, they could be moved, that constant knowledge is given to customers through a really considered automation layer. But through kind of, it wouldn't be just one size fits all. What we're looking at is many different options for stuff like chatbots and an automation within our IVRs, and also even with social media, being able to look at different types of technology that fit a certain use case rather than finding a one size fits all, because it does change per channel in terms of where we see our customer base, and I would probably say industry wide. But the second key point is making sure that handoff to a human being where it is required is as seamless as possible and fits many other industries. And I think all of us from the travel industry here and would recognise that other industries such as telco, when you look at a digital kind of strategy, we're slightly behind. And I think there's so many things that we should now really pick up and take on from those other industries that would really work for us, where we have that propensity is growing, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere soon. Whether you're looking at B2B or B2C contacts, it's going to stay, and we're going to need to get used to speaking to our customers a lot more and making the most out of that. The last thing I'd like to say is around loyalty, where you look to customer segmentation and you're looking to drive this, that actually having that right evolution to your digital strategy really shouldn't just be for low-end segments. It should also be for your high-end. It can't all be kind of that concierge service. It needs to be that your digital strategy kind of ticks that box, because not everyone wants to speak to a human being, which I know is pretty obvious, but your digital strategy should complement that as well. I think just kind of roll it together that everything that we're doing is making sure that our automation is accurate, making sure that where you have to go after a human being is correct, and that we're looking at the use cases of how that digital strategy kind of really develops our loyalty long term. Okay, thank you, Nora.
Thank you very much. And John, the combination of human and digital, and making sure that there's both components of a critical customer connection is key, is very close to our heart, as you know. So Eric, despite of many of the challenges that we've discussed today, we want to believe that there is going to be some true positive impacts of this crisis for the future. So do you believe, I personally do, but do you believe that have we all become more conscious travelers after all of this? Will we be potentially contributing for the better of the world as we move out of COVID? What's your views?
So I don't think all of them are, but yes, there is a fundamental trend, again, accelerated by the crisis. Just because there is a global pandemic and the climate emergency, I don't think it means that people have stopped thinking about their own personal needs and happiness. And on the contrary, I would say, after all the lockdowns, although most tourists hate to think that their presence is damaging in any way, the priority for most people will be the experience freedom and time with family and friends. But I think people are going to make choices in a different way, taking much more responsibility about their decisions and actions while being on holiday or planning a holiday. This is also an opportunity to transform the industry to ensure, I think, a fairer distribution of its benefits and to advance the transition towards a carbon neutral and more resilient tourism economy. But it's a long-term goal, of course. I think the whole pandemic situation has been a wake-up call, has kind of shown us that maybe there is a different way to travel, a way that doesn't rely so much on flying and doing travel quickly, but rather maybe doing some kind of road trips or investing in alternative, more planet-friendly and more authentic local way to see places and explore cultures. So we have been working a lot on that at Evaneos since the inception. We have defined two main objectives around sustainable tourism. There can be others, but I think also we have to make choices to have a real impact. So the first thing is to develop local economy with a better distribution of tourism income by giving preference to local owned business. I've seen a few years ago, just as an example, a study that showed that in Thailand, for example, 70% of the tourism income ended up leaving the destination and going back to the country of the tourists, because people stay in a big chain hotels, because they don't eat local food, etc. So at the end, the local economy doesn't benefit that much from tourism, and I think this is something that has to change to really keep the authenticity and personality of each destination. Otherwise, it's going to be a global planet with a global tourism offer, and this is not what we are seeking for, because it will really limit the interest of traveling. Second topic for us is to limit over tourism at scale by developing curiosity of travelers and originality in our local agents proposition. Another number here, 50% of the travelers in the world, they concentrate only in 10 destination countries. So that means almost everybody travel in the same places at the same time, and it's really damaging in those places and really damaging the experience of the travelers. And if we want people continue traveling, we have to offer a broader diversity of things. And this is why we are working a lot with our local agents to really bring some originality on our website, to really diversify their offers, and trying to avoid mass tourism places where everybody goes and it doesn't make any differentiation as a brand. So we have to be differentiated. And if everybody sells the same things, it's really difficult to build a brand, I think. Also, I think it's important to measure the effect, measure the impact of what we do. And this is why we are engaged in a B Corp certification program. And I really encourage all travel companies maybe to explore what is a B Corp certification. It's an international and very demanding certification that leads to transform the company today. And also we are putting in place a scoring of our partners, of our suppliers all over the world, that rates each of our agency partners according to financial, sustainable, and quality criteria. And the goal here is to create better trips in terms of quality and impact, and to measure our progress. So I think all companies in travel have to have these kind of reflections. I think greenwashing doesn't work anymore. We have to prove things when we talk about sustainability and show the travelers what we are really doing and what is the impact. And they are looking for much more transparency and to understand the business models and how it works behind the website, behind the scene. And this is something that our travelers are asking a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric. So this is now the end of our panelists' input. So thank you very much for your insights, Meltem, Paul, Eric, and John. If I had to summarize some of the major takeaways before we move to the Q&A, first of all, travel is a robust industry. As Meltem said, we've gone through many other crises before, and together we'll be able to come up much stronger from this crisis for all of us in the industry. Secondly, there are key learnings from this experience, from that COVID. We have to focus on the customer. This is a truly emotional sector. So we have to understand what they procure, how they procure, why they make a decision. And last but not least, I think this has definitely accelerated for all travel companies to relook at their digital strategy and how to balance the right strategy between digital and human. It's going to be key. So with that, I'd like to ask Robin, my colleague Robin, to help us here with some of the Q&A, some of the questions maybe that we got through the session. You are on mute, Robin.
The joys of technology. Thanks, Nora, and a fascinating discussion. It was great to hear some different opinions, different perspectives from people across the travel industry there. So there's a few different questions. Some have been sent in before. Some have been asked in the chat. If you've got questions now, please do ask them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. Not going to have time for all of them. So the first question is for you, John, specifically. So it's which you talked a lot about different channels. Which social channels have been the best for you during the period, given the challenges?
So if you would have asked me in April, I probably would have said none. But it's I think as we've worked through, I think it's I think a few of the other guys have alluded to it. It's more around kind of the Facebook customer-led groups have really been very interesting because they've brought up issues that potentially we weren't aware of, and we've been able to really create customer advocacy by speaking to customers in those groups without being very defensive, and really understand how customers were behaving. So to give you an example, I think there was one of the groups which was based out of the UK, which really couldn't understand the differences between how we were giving out vouchers or refunds and all of this kind of stuff. And we were able to go in there and really explain the rationale behind where some of our policies lied and why some of those decisions were made. And it really had an effect on how customers felt about us. And the actual outcome of that was how the really ironically how the customer propensity to contact our contact centers actually dropped by that little bit of interaction in social media. So I hate to say it, but it was Facebook that kind of helped us the most, I would say, because it was so open.
Yeah, thanks, John. Fascinating. Well, I think I can only imagine what a challenge it was to try and kind of keep an eye on all of that. So really, really interesting. So a question for all of you now. So it's not an easy question. It's a very interesting one. So and Nora, I'm sure you'll have a view on this as well. So what do you think the pandemic's done for the human touch in hospitality? Do you think it's the end of the human touch? Do you think that digital is going to take over, or do you think it creates a new opportunity in the future for brands to have a human relationship with travelers? So Paul, perhaps you'd like to have a go at that first. I'm sure other people have views.
Could you just repeat the last part of the question, Robin?
Yeah. So I think the question is really: do we consider that the human touch is still going to be present in travel post-pandemic, or have digital and automation kind of taken over, or do we think actually the pandemic's created a new opportunity for brands to engage with their customers or their clients? In your case.
Yeah, as always, it's a balance, and you're right. I think that balance has shifted. So we see really high adoption of some of the digital capabilities that we've created for customers to transact. Where we see a new stream of demand is for softer issues, right? So customers seeking reassurance, customers trying to understand their corporate travel policies and the interpretation of that through COVID, customers understanding what it means in terms of duty of care. And one of the things where I think we've started to bridge the gap is customers are now asking us a much broader set of questions in terms of, direct and indirect. Hey, do I need to wear a mask? Hey, how come my normal flight isn't running? What do I need to do at the airport? And so we are trying digital channels to capture all of that and to give customers the ability to self-serve. But having really knowledgeable, up-to-date travel consultants being able to do that is a real benefit for our clients. We actually, by coincidence, were rolling out a new knowledge base internally during the late summer, and we actually pivoted the launch of that knowledge base to be primarily COVID focused, right? So we got our team to really invest in what sort of knowledge do we need to get to our front line that's about COVID, both, supply and airline changes and all the rest of it. But in terms of those wider aspects, and we've really seen customers respond well to that in terms of the feedback they've given us. So it's, I think the answer to that question for a very, very long time will be a balance, but the balance is shifting for sure. And we need to do more. The expectations have been reset and increased, and we need to respond to that.
Okay, really good. Any other comments on that? Nora, I think you want to say something.
Maybe I would just echo this. I think there are true moments of truth in the customer journey where our travelers are looking for reassurance, more of information, more reassurance, more confirmation before they actually travel. So I don't think that it has killed the request for human interaction. I think it has increased the request for human interaction at the right moment in the customer journey. So really, what is that right moment, and being able to use the right channel for when the traveler decides is, I think, the right strategy for all of us moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Nora. So question, Eric, there's a few questions for you. I mean, the business is fascinating, so I'm not surprised. I'm gonna roll two questions up into one actually for this one. So I guess the first part of the question is, how do you see your relationship changing, or do you see your relationship changing with local providers post-pandemic? And do you think there's an opportunity for travel companies, so larger travel brands, to support those local providers as we come out of this pandemic in any way?
Yes. So this year, our relationship with our local agents all over the world, it has changed dramatically, because we were not discussing with them about the next trips they would be selling, but more about how they could survive. And we played a role here that was very different from the past, to really help them surviving, to share the best practices within the network, to have the right actions to make the company survive. So we organized a lot of webinars, a lot of calls, a lot of documents to help them managing the crisis, to save costs, of course, to handle in a good way the money from the customers they received from the accounts. And they had to keep that money, and they have to keep that money to organize the trips of the future. And this is something which is hard to do for small businesses who are not used to talk about numbers, to do some budgets, to do some forecasting. So we really have them doing that and protecting the money of the travelers. And we are talking about big numbers. So we are working a lot on that. And I think, yes, bigger player, traditional player can play a role here, by probably being more flexible in the way they transfer the money to the providers, because very often they transfer the money after the trips, and it's for the rebound, it's going to be difficult for them to manage, because they would have to invest first and then get the money. So probably in the cash flows scheme, they can help a lot. And for us, it was a kind of opportunity here, because we saw this community of local agents becoming a real community. Because when they work with tour operators, for example, they are only suppliers, and working with a marketplace like our, they really became a community, and they feel like they can be helped even from their competitors, local agents. So we saw a lot of good stories around that, and I've seen a lot of solidarity within the network.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it sounds, again, everything you described sounds really fascinating, and it's great to know that people have been helping each other as part of that community as you've gone through this pandemic. So we've got time for I think one or two more. I think so. Prior to the pandemic, we all there was a lot of talk of digital nomads, and whether that, what was going to happen with that segment of traveller. Probably one initially for John, but interested in other views on this. Do we think that's going to be a segment that increases? Do you think we're going to see different types of travel as a consequence of remote working as we come out of the pandemic?
100%, yeah. I think so. I look at the way we're starting to see bookings come through, and I think, again, from a B2B and B2C perspective, that you're seeing different types of travel. I think Eric alluded to it earlier, that it's going to be around a different type of experience that people are looking for, and I think in terms of the way that they book, the way that they interact with the company will be very, very different. So what was the end of that question there, Robin? Sorry, I'm just making sure I answer both of them there.
So I don't know if we can have it up on screen again, but it was it was really, do we think there's going to be a new segment for the travel industry, and therefore a different, I suppose, what does that mean for travel businesses? So do they need to have different offers and different packages for those consumers?
Yeah, so I think the product offering is going to be very different. So it's not just about looking at how you make a successful summer or you make successful of school holidays, because that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. We've even seen it where areas such as the Canaries and different areas that have unlocked, there's been high travelers to areas that seasonally you wouldn't normally see. So I think it is going to definitely unlock those, and by consequence the product will change, where you're going to see customers looking to pay for different elements of what they want to be able to travel with. And I think the actual, looking more probably at Paul's world, that package holiday seems to be kind of really picking up in its popularity as we look into 2021.
Yeah.
Just to add on this, I think there are also, for the business travel organizations, they'll have to be opening up their travel policies to be able to enable those travelers to do their leisure stay, so a combination of business and leisure. So I think corporate travel policies will have to be flexible, as well as local supply in terms of short-term rentals, long-term rentals, also for diversity of opportunities such as Wi-Fi everywhere, Wi-Fi for free, etc., to enable also people to work, from their leisure destination or vice versa. So again, I think the full ecosystem indeed will have to accommodate, to respond to these expectations from us, as travelers.
Thanks, Nora, and thanks, John. It would be interesting to see whether or not that's spreading out and the change in that travel has an impact on the pressure on some of those tourism places that Eric was talking about earlier. Paul and Meltem, I'm conscious of time. Is there anything you'd like to add to that before I hand back to Nora?
All fine for me just now, Robin. I'm conscious of time, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Nora, back to you, I think, unless Meltem's got anything to add.
I was trying to unmute myself, sorry. No, I totally agree that because there are certain, definitely this will create a new segment, most probably for the travel industry and different offers. And I would like to make one remark about the human touch part. I really don't think that human touch and touchless technology or digitalization is contradicting with each other. I think, integrating emotional intelligence into the process can definitely take out the human touch in the way we are communicating, providing experience to our customers. So I don't think it's a matter of what technology you use, and I think it's a matter of how you use the technology to be able to portray human touch in a different way. So that's one point that I would like to stress.
Thank you, Meltem. That's great. Back to you, Nora.
Thank you all very much. So thank you for our panelists, wonderful panel. Thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights and all these tangible takeaways that I'm sure most of the participants to this webinar can take away. If you missed any of this exciting session, we'll be sharing the recording with you all, and we will be uploading this to Webhelp's website, webhelp.com. And if you have any questions, just please don't hesitate to reach out or connect us through LinkedIn. And with that, I want to wish you all a very safe and happy holidays and a bright 2021 for all of you and your families. So thank you very much for attending today, and see you soon. Thank you.